Hello YouTube, De-bodgery here. Welcome to EV Components Review. So this video is really about the power stages, but one of the things I want to explain is this little burn area and all those MOSFETs right there. So, this logic board, it was stuck down, more or less like that, right? Over top of where those MOSFETs are, so you can see them right through that hole. So it seems logical that these MOSFETs destroyed themselves and then they, spewed flames and everything and made this giant crater in the logic board. It seems logical. And when I was looking this over, inspecting to try to determine where things actually failed, that did cross my mind that that's possibly how it happened. But let me set this aside. When that happens, so you can see these MOSFETs are really gone. When that happens, you get lighter burns. You don't get scorching like this. So if you remember on my logic board, you have areas like this where you just have dark patches. So you can see one right there, you can see one right there, and I've shown those burns on my logic board. So that's what happens when MOSFETs die. And the reason why that is because they burn fast and then they're out. That's it. And it's just the nature of MOSFETs. So these guys are definitely torched. They truly are. But when MOSFETs die, whether they get too hot, you run them over current, over voltage, whatever it is that causes their junction to fail, they tend to become a low resistance, something higher than copper, but something in the low ohms range. So as a result, they get very hot for a very short period of time. They basically burn themselves up like you see here. And it's still a semiconductor junction. It's not like a solid copper bar like this is. It's a semiconductor junction. So they dead short for a little while, and then that semiconductor junction burns up. It literally just dissolves, goes to vapor, and then no longer is there. And then at that point, the MOSFETs stop burning. So that usually takes a couple seconds, and it's enough time to produce some significant heat on them for a very short amount of time, and then it goes out. So as a result, you get dark patches like this, but you don't get giant flaming craters. You just get dark areas on whatever is close to them, because the heat that's created here is for a very short amount of time. It's a couple seconds, maybe 5 at most, and probably that's even really pushing it. And then they're all done, because the semiconductor junctions, they just burn up very, very quickly, and then they're done. So that's what happened to these guys. Their junctions burned up. They did make some tremendous heat. They do throw that straight up, like I described in my Rush teardown videos for my controller, but all it does is create darkening areas like this, but it doesn't create craters. Never, ever. So this set of MOSFETs dying did not blow up the logic board. It was the other way around. The transients here, because this is still battery plus right here, all across the top of there, that's battery plus, and then this end just hanging in the wind. The transients here were just absolutely enormous. This arced first, and all of that killed the MOSFETs, or, really close. One happened, and within a couple milliseconds or 10 seconds or 5 seconds later, everything else was dying too. So this controller, I know why or when it died, rather. The owner, he was doing a speed run. He cranked the throttle, went up to like full speed for whatever it was, 20, 30 seconds. And then he was at the end of his length, crammed on the brakes, which put on massive regen, created enormous voltage spikes and everything, and then it all just died at that point, because you had these massive EMF spikes that nothing could filter out. So anyway, of course, MOSFETs are going to die under that scenario. That's just how that works. All right, so this really caught me by surprise. You can see the screw is still in there. It's literally welded to the brass. You can see that part of the head is melted, the brass is melted, and yet the solder is intact. So here is another one of those same screws. You can see they don't quite look the same anymore. Yeah, these screws are stainless steel, folks. This isn't, made out of putty or something. They are stainless steel screws, and it's literally partly melted away. I'm going to say 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit to do that. Brass takes more like, say, 1,1500 degrees Fahrenheit. to do that. But what will do this without massive heat, like say, a torch or flames or something like that, is electrical arcing. It will do all of this stuff because you get really, really localized, massive amounts of heat, in which case that would explain why it is that the solder is still there. Because otherwise, this stud would have just literally delaminated off the board, except for that all the arcing was happening right here, so all the heat was localized right here and not at the solder, which is why the stud is still attached. I'm pushing on it. It's not going anywhere. It's definitely still attached. So anyway, yeah, electrical arcing was the main reason why this failed. And it failed because of the massive amount of back EMF that was happening in these capacitors. That was the primary failure point, and it extended to here and then did this stuff, which is really impressive. So let's grab this shell, look at that a little bit closer, drop this into place. There we go. All right, so you can see all of this, and you can see the melted aluminum on the shell. This is about 6 millimeters, guys. It takes a really large amount of voltage to do that. So in those capacitors right here, which are just swinging in the wind on that end, the amount of back EMF, the transient spikes over here were enormously huge. That is the whole point of these capacitors, is to rein that shit in so that this and this kind of shit does not happen, or this kind of shit. When I saw this, when I pulled this thing open, I was like, how? How do you do that? That just takes some serious amount of voltage and current to pull that one off. To literally slag melt stainless steel and brass and aluminum, yeah, I mean, this is really impressive. KO Moto flat out does not want you to see this failure mode. They do not, because this just shows you just how horrifically bad their design is. And this problem is such an easy one to fix. Even the F-Spec and the Pro controller were better than this, because they at least had another battery plus stud over here to tie that stuff together. That would have been still better. The real solution, however, is not that. It's having proper battery plus buses, proper battery minus buses, not all this bullshit bridges and bodging together. This is a shit show. And here it is. Here's your proof of it right there. All right, so anyway, yeah, we pull this out, look at it a little bit closer here. Set this aside. Yeah, I think that's absolutely amazing that we have melted stainless steel, melted brass, melted aluminum. Yeah. KO Moto, good job, guys. You guys are just awesome. Anyway, all this heat right here, this is all arc heating, okay? Most of this is not from these MOSFETs. They just don't burn that long. They burn up in a couple seconds. They throw all their heat straight up. I've talked about this before. The copper backings on them acts kind of like a shield, so they throw all their heat straight out away from them. So they would not discolor the board like this. This is all from all the electrical arcing, not from those guys dying. And in fact, they aren't even the root cause failure. It's the electrical arcing issue. It's the massive transient spikes up here that is the root cause. This is an after effect. All right, so I want to show you a couple more things about this before we move on. And so I've got 2 of the standoff screws still in here. And that's because I want to preserve the thermal paste underneath. On the other power stage, I wiped all that stuff away. That was laid down really nice. This one, however, nope. Not even slightly. This one is an absolute crap job of putting down thermal paste. Yeah, you can see it, guys. Look at that. That's it. That's all that was here. You got a little blob here, a little blob here, a little blob there, and then like nothing anywhere else. I did put my thumb in it, so yeah, that's actually my thumbprint in the thermal paste. But yeah, that's literally all the thermal paste that was in between this aluminum and the metal core printed circuit board. This little smattering of it. All I can say is, KO Moto, you absolutely astonish me every time I look at another one of your products, just how shitty you guys are. You can't even be bothered to put thermal paste across the whole board. by the way, folks, this area right here, this is where the MOSFETs are. There are no MOSFETs up here. See, look. That's just all copper. Here's all the MOSFETs. And to have, thermal issues right here, what was possibly part of this failure because the thermal path here is just absolutely lacking. Sure, that's possible. You see this black spot right here. I don't know what this is, but it's on the aluminum here, and it's left a mark here. So I'm going to guess some kind of a corrosive substance. You can see another black spot right there. And if you look like right there, that little loop, that's this little bit of solder paste right there. But there's no mark right here. So this was absolute an air gap right there between here. There was no thermal connection between the two. And I'm going to say also the same thing for all of this was just an air gap. That's kind of the whole point of thermal paste, is to take two surfaces and join them together so you have a good thermal path from surface A to surface B. And clearly with such an massively inadequate amount of thermal paste put on here, well, yeah, the thermal path was highly suggestive at best. Yeah, I when I pulled this off, I was like, fuck me. that is not just bad, worse, horrific. How could KO stoop to such a shoddy bit of thermal paste placement as this? Holy cow. All right, so let me put that back together again. I want to preserve that because, damn. Yeah, put my two standoffs back in their holes again to preserve that. Because if I start moving things against each other, it's going to get rubbed around. And I don't want that to happen. That one will not go in the hole again. Try this one. Yeah, there we go. That one's going in. Yeah, I don't want that to smudge around. I want it to stay as much like I found it as possible. Yeah, maybe this one I just had it crooked. Here we go. Yeah, that's going in. Thank you. All right, so that's the middle power stage. And I'm going to talk about this again in a minute. There's one last thing I want to show you that I've said is a problem with KO Moto power stages anyway. Pull that aside. Let's look at that one. All right, so here's the bottom power stage. I've wiped all the thermal paste off of here. They had a nice layer of it on there. It all adhered down to the inside of the shell as well. No complaints about how the main power stage was put down with thermal paste. That was done just fine. Okay, but here it is, 2 out of 2 KO Moto Rush power stages with that again. You saw my teardown of my Rush controller. That exact stud was sheared off as well. Okay, so this is how I found it, guys. This stud was stuck inside here. When I lift this off, I put M3 screws and all of those brass studs, and I lift this straight off so I don't stress anything here, don't cant anything over. I'm just pulling straight up. The solder should easily withstand that, no problems. In fact, these ones here, yeah, see, those ones are all down. They're all nice and secure. I've done nothing to this board other than taking it apart to see what I'd find. And here is literally 2 out of 2 Rush controllers with that center stud sheared off. Mine has that way. I put it on my hot plate to reflow, solder everything, and reattach this one. And here is another one with the exact same problem. This is purely a guess, readily admit that it is. But considering how literally 100% of the Rush controllers that I have ever taken apart have that stud sheared off, I'm going to say the probability that there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other Rush controllers out there with that stud sheared off is really, really probable. Yeah. Okay. I don't know that this power stage works or not. I don't actually care. Probably these MOSFETs right here died along with those ones, because these ones are in parallel with those ones. So, killing those ones very likely killed these ones too, but they just failed internally and still look like MOSFETs, right? But anyway, this power stage is going to go on my hot plate so that I can pull all this stuff off so we can see underneath that piece of plastic. Anyway, so yeah, expect that after a while, this is going to get that done to it. And, of course, I'll resolder that back on again because, it just should be. Okay, last thing I want to show you guys is ceramic capacitors. Let me turn these sideways. And yeah, you can definitely see it on these ones. See how dark these are? And like this one right here is also pretty dark. I've got a couple of examples. Let me wipe my hands because they got black crap all over them from all this stuff. All right, so here is a 330 NF cap. These are 220s, I believe. And here is a 100 NF ceramic cap. So if you notice, mine are very blonde, and this one is pretty dark brown, and this one's pretty dark brown. That one's a little bit less dark, and these ones are, so yeah, whoops. So if I look at this one right here, that one looks pretty close to the same color. These ones are a little bit darker. So you could say this is soot or something like that, and I can tell you for a fact that I have scrubbed these capacitors quite vigorously to get all the soot off of them. So no, they're not dark from soot. They are dark because they are getting hot. And that's the way ceramic caps go. They don't have any chemical inside them, like an electrolytic does, so there's no fluid in there. There's no paper wrappings, there's no foil layers, things like that. Things that can possibly create gases and expand. It's basically ceramic layers with foil layers, one bonded to the other to make a ceramic capacitor. So that's how they're made. And so the only way that they do anything is when they get hot, they turn dark. And so when I do the same thing here, so here is my two example ceramic caps that are not cooked. You can see these ones here are much darker than mine are. They definitely don't have that same blonde coloration to them. It's because these guys are working seriously hard. They're getting very, very hot, and that's what capacitors do when they work too hard, is they get hot and then they stop working. They stop being capacitors anymore. Electrolytics, they split their tops open. Ceramic caps, they just turn dark brown like you're seeing these ones do. So yeah, these capacitors are massively inadequate for the job. I've been saying that since I saw photographs of the Pro controller, and here you've got evidence of it. These ones are actually cooking. So you need those 5 caps or 6 caps like you got here. I would say more is better. You need them here, need them here, need them here, and you need them here. So 1, 2, 3, 4 positions for capacitors, not just down here in one end. This right here is not doing any good for anything other than those MOSFETs right here. They're doing a slight job for these ones and none at all for these ones. The whole point of their existence is to deal with high frequency transient noise. And with 5 of them on here, it's an inadequate number even for this right here. And it's definitely inadequate for everything here. And there's nothing down here. So yeah, this is a bad design. Truly it is. It should never have been that way. And if you look in Christopher Kleinschmidt's video on their current power stages, they only have 3 of the 5 here. So they're making the 3 that they have work, for where 5 isn't even adequate. And you can clearly see that they are darkening and burning up slowly. They are suffering dramatically. On here, you have the same problem. These ones are in a little bit better shape. And this is where all the scorching and stuff was on this stage, right? And yet these ones here are still dark. That one there is really dark compared to these other ones. This one's here are much more blonder. So they're suffering less than these ones are. But again, you need those here and here and here and here. And you don't. You have them just stuck down on one end. So probably in every regard, this set of MOSFETs in every KO Moto controller, they are the ones that suffer the most trauma because they're just simply the farthest away from the ceramics, so they don't get any high frequency filtering at all. And then in a situation like this, in the Rush controller, where you basically have this antenna out here and no completed current path, these are the ones that are going to die. So anyway, folks, that is a Rush controller, autopsy. Yeah, I'm sure KO Moto loves to see this. Don't care. You guys should stop making shit. Yeah, you should listen to people who actually have a clue, and, well, you don't. So, yeah, you should definitely listen to people who have a clue. And change your designs dramatically. This is stupid. This is a bad idea. The inductance here is ridiculously high through the roof. You have no battery plus bus on here. Your battery minus buses are a shit show. Your phase buses are a shit show. Of course, this stuff blows up. Of course, it blows up. What other possible outcome could you expect from such a shitty design as this? Well, I think that's it, everyone. There'll be macros coming on this stuff too. But yeah, that's it for the overview of this particular Rush controller.